You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
All right, well, welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we find fantastic Australians who can help us be healthier, wealthier, and wiser. And this morning, we've got the founder of Nourished Life and now the founder of Sans Drinks, Irene Falcone, to meet with us and share her wisdom. Good morning, Irene.
Good morning, Brett. How are you?
Mate, really well here on a Friday morning. It's gone chilly. Hopefully that means there's snow on the mountains.
I heard actually that there is snow on the mountains.
That's what we want. That's exciting. Very cool. Hey, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking through your background, and I always like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? What were your mum and dad into? And then how did you progress from school and with your career?
That's a really interesting question. I'm actually really embarrassed about my past. So no one's ever asked me about that before. I usually just tell people I'm a Northern Beaches girl, born and bred. But the reality is I grew up in Altona in Melbourne.
Yep.
And basically in a housing commission area. And I went to a school with no uniform and no rules. And I grew up, in sort of Melbourne in the 80s. I would hang out at the old abandoned train stations. I think we had a lot of fun, actually. I think it was great. My mum was a stay-home mum. And my dad, interestingly enough, was a builder who had his own business. So I think I definitely get my entrepreneurial skills from my dad. He had his own building business. There was a earthquake in 1990 in Newcastle, the really big one. And there was a lot of work in Newcastle around that time. So we moved from Melbourne to Newcastle in 1992 so my dad could work rebuilding a lot of the homes in those areas. And I sort of grew up there it's really interesting because I look at my high school years and I spent that entire time wanting to do nothing but be in marketing. So I would read all these marketing books and, we didn't have the internet then, but I just read these marketing books and these marketing publications. I'd get like B&T magazine and Ad News and I would just devour them. So I was really obsessed with marketing and advertising from then on. And I knew that is all I ever wanted to do.
So interesting. So you finished school. Did you finish school in Newcastle or were you finished school by the time you got there?
No, I finished school, did really bad in the HSC, so I didn't get into uni. And then I had my license, so I would borrow Dad's Ford Falcon 500. And I'd drive to Sydney and then I would literally hand my CV into all those ad agencies. So all the, Mojos and all those agencies. And so I kind of did that every day. And then I landed a job with John Singleton's.
Okay. So what were you doing there when you started?
I started at John Singleton's as a media assistant in 1993 when he was in the middle of the city, Pitt Street, one of the cities in Sydney. And then I worked there as a media assistant. And then I was there for a really long time, sort of progressed from being a media assistant to a media buyer and then a media manager. And it was incredible because I got to look after some awesome brands. I ended up looking after the Nine Network and Fairfax. And I ended up doing everything I wanted to do because I loved marketing and advertising. And I got, I was able to get right into it.
So when you land in a really storied business with a founder who, was a real legend in his industry, what did you learn? Like as a young person, what struck you joining that company?
I loved working, and I got to be in meetings with James Packer, and I got to learn a lot about being ballsy and a little bit aggressive, and these people that influenced me so much in the marketing world were, we're so politically correct now. And then, like they were smoking cigarettes in the office and cigars and drinking scotch And it was so, the Mad Men series, it was still like that in the 90s. And I loved that strong, ballsy attitude. It was naughty and it was fun, and you could say how you felt, and I really liked that, actually. I really liked it. I probably cried a lot because they probably told me, they probably yelled at me a few times. But yeah, I think I have picked up a lot of that in my personality.
So interesting. So these are real go-getters, like make things happen. And it's funny what you touch on in that the energy of that environment. So you go out from there. I see on your background here, you've given me your National Advertising Manager of Universal Pictures. Run me through that. Like, what did that teach you? How did that set you up for the things that you've gone on to do?
So that was an amazing progression for me, because then I was able to move from the agency side, where you're looking after lots of brands, to the client, to the actual client side. And so in 2007, UIP Pictures decided to separate, and Universal Pictures launched in Australia for the first time, so their theatrical division. So it was really incredible to land that job. Actually, it was my dream. Oh, it was my dream job. I just had a baby, and they were setting up the Australian office in the Universal Pictures Music Building at the Rocks. So we set that whole thing up in a year, and I got to work on, I think, 110 different movie releases. So the first movie I worked on was Knocked Up.
Yep.
We all know that movie. And I'll tell you something
classic.
else.
It's a great movie. And you just had a baby when you released Knocked Up.
I just had a baby. I released Knocked Up, and you wouldn't believe this. I was the first person in Australia to ever advertise on Facebook.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it was with that movie. I had to call someone in America, and I booked a little postcard size ad, and we worked with a digital agency to do an app that was on Facebook that you had to tag friends to take to the movie premiere. It was like a thing, like a social thing, but it was really innovative at the time, and that is where, from that moment, I fell in love with social media.
Okay, very, very interesting. So you do that, and then you mentioned you had your first child in 07, 06?
Yes.
Yeah, and you've got a bunch of kids now?
Yes, that was with my first husband. Keep getting married, so I have to keep up. That was my first husband. No, just joking. And then I got divorced a few years later, and then I remarried, and then I had another baby in 2000. And so it's really interesting. I had another baby just as I launched Nourished Life, actually. Two really pivotal, life-changing careers. And in both times, I had literally just given birth, which is really interesting. I have 2 step kids as well, so that's how I have 4 kids.
Yep. Yeah. So when you have a baby, start a new career twice. So do you think, my observation is always that having a child is a massive personal development experience, probably the best one you can think of. But do you need to be rational to start a new career or a new business, or slightly irrational?
Oh, completely and utterly irrational. You have to be completely and utterly crazy.
Yeah. So you've had a baby, you've gone crazy, you've started a new business. I understand this. When I started our business, a lot of people thought that was a crazy thing to do. It probably was. But how did you come up with this idea? What got you to go from movies and marketing to skincare? Okay,
really easy answer. I got to do 1 day a week volunteer work at Universal Pictures. We were owned by, at the time, we were owned by GE. And GE have an incredible corporate policy where they're really great with their employees, and you can have days off to do different things. So I volunteered for a company called the National Toxics Network. This is a company that lobbied government to get the BPA out of baby bottles. So, BPA isn't in plastic anymore, but it used to be back then. And BPA is a hormone disruptor. And I had just had, I just had a baby myself. So I really resonated with that. And so I learnt so much from volunteering with this company. I ended up building their website. I ended up getting them onto social media. And I ended up going out there and learning all about things like fracking, parabens and toxins, environmental toxins. And that really struck a chord with me. And I really enjoyed working with them. I got really, really involved. Actually, I was really passionate about that. I ended up probably working at least a day a week, not a month, with them. And I learned so much about what we're putting on our bodies and what we're putting into our oceans and everything about toxins.
And so this is really ahead of the curve, in that people understood, I think, the issues. But to your point around political correctness, it's quite interesting is that it's politically correct now to talk about toxins, but in those days, it would have been very politically incorrect. So that singleton training, I think, probably helped you a lot. You look at that and you say, well, hang on, what's going on here? And did you start to understand that a lot of the female makeup, skin products, etc., were full of all sorts of goodies?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's lead in lipstick, and we consume like kilos of lipstick, women, every year, and we're consuming lead. We are putting 500 different toxins on our bodies. And at the time, everybody thought that I was a conspiracy theorist. I found that actually at the time, the way to cut through with people, and there was a niche bunch of people there that were very interested in what I was saying. They were really interested in what Pete Evans was saying. They were really interested in what other people that were saying, that were sort of small groups. And I found that if I couldn't get through to people about what they were putting on their body, people tended to listen about what we were putting down our drains. And at that time, microbeads were big. The microbeads were in everything, and no one cared that we were pouring microbeads off our skin into our water and that we were killing our fish at that time. But slowly, the media and people picked up on the fact that we're killing our wild, we're eating plastic in our fish that came from something we were putting on our face. Microbeads are banned now, in 2000, they were banned a few years ago now. The chemicals that we are putting on our sunscreens, on our body, we're going into the ocean, we're going into the Great Barrier Reef, and they are killing our coral. So whilst people didn't really buy into the fact that they were killing themselves, they were worried about killing the fish. Right? They certainly understood when they went into the Great Barrier Reef and they could see dead fish floating on the top of the water, and then they could see the destruction of our coral. That really struck a chord with people more so. And then I sort of tried to go a bit more down that angle to try and get a bit more awareness around the topic. Okay, so then you start this business. Did you have one product in mind, or what was the concept? I started. And then how did the concept differ to where you ended up? I was at Universal Pictures. I found out about Facebook. I thought, I'm going to set up a page to talk to people about what I've seen, the dead fish, the lead in our lipsticks. And I just wrote a blog, had no intention of setting up a store. I just really wanted to I had my dream job. I had no intention of leaving. Although I have to say, I spent a lot of time in HR getting in trouble because to backtrack a little bit, I really brought over to Universal Pictures, a company owned by GE, a company that could not be more corporate and more politically correct. I brought with them very much the John Singleton's attitude with me, and that didn't go down well. They did not like me negotiating with suppliers in the way that I was negotiating them. They did not like me doing deals. I needed 3 quotes for everything. Though I used to get in trouble a lot. But anyway, I would set up a Facebook page and talked about the lead in lipstick. And what I found was customers were asking me, okay, Irene, that's all great, but where do we get lipstick without lead in it? And so that kind of made me realize I will go find a place. I'll go find somewhere to get, natural lipstick from, and there wasn't anywhere. So search. Eventually I found this little town in a place called Whitefish in the US, a little fishing town, and they had made this vegan 100% natural lip balm called Haror. You can get Haror anywhere now, by the way, anywhere. It's sold everywhere around the world in every corner store. But at the time, no one had heard of it. So I brought in 100 lip balms from Haror, cherry, red lip balms, and the exchange rate. So they cost me 99 cents US.
Yeah.
And 99 cents US was worth $1.05 in Australia.
Yeah.
They were the days.
They were the days, the good old days.
And I flew them over and I sold them for about $8 each. And then I made $800, whatever. I think it's 800. I'm still bad with maths. Anyway, sold them, bought more flavors, sold them, and I just sold them off Facebook. And then eventually I ended up setting up like a Shopify store. And then I branched out. I don't know what happened. I started off with some lip balms. The next thing you know, I had like 6,000 different SKUs of products, and Nourished Life was born. I remember being on TV. So I started Nourished Life in October 2012. I was on Channel 9 on July 2013. So about a few months later, I was on TV and they said to me, Irene, you're a mum of 4 who has thrown out all their makeup and is selling like natural products. That is a very, very niche industry that you have started, Irene. Wow. That is really interesting. Do you think there's a market there, for people wanting products that are natural? It was so unheard of at the time.
Yeah.
Channel 9 are questioning the validity. They thought, that was newsworthy. It was newsworthy, right, that I was selling a product without parabens in it in 2013. Yeah. My website crashed from that interview and I ended up quitting Universal Pictures, a job I loved, the next month. And then I just did Nourished Life full time. I sold my house to get out of my mortgage. I sold my car. I bought stock, rented, and Nourished Life was born.
Okay, so just going back there, because I think this is, something you've said there is really, really interesting. So where was your house that you sold?
I was in West Pennant Hills.
And what was the mortgage that you had on it?
I had a $500,000, about a $480,000 mortgage on the house.
And what do you think what did you sell the house for?
I would have sold it for 400. I think it was 400.
So did you get rid of your
90,000?
mortgage? Did you have some capital left?
No, I didn't really have any capital left. No, I didn't really have any capital from selling the house. It was more about exiting the mortgage. And so that was 2013. So I don't think certainly the house prices hadn't gone up at that point.
Okay. And so then, because that was the bottom of the market. So then you go and you rent a place with your
I had a
little
159 Alfa Romeo from marriage number 1.
Yeah.
So I sold that and I got my capital from my car.
Yeah. And so put about, 20,000 into the company?
Yes. And then I couldn't get a loan from CommBank. I remember asking if I could have a loan for like 10 or 15 grand to buy some stock, and they said no. But then I went back to CommBank a couple of weeks later and asked for a loan for a holiday for 20,000 to do a holiday, and they gave it to me.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't give me a business loan, but I took a personal loan out for a holiday and I ended up using that instead, obviously, for stock.
That's so good. So it's really interesting. So these are the things that are not often spoken about. So you rent a place for a few $100 a week. Where did you rent?
I actually rented on the northern beaches. I think it was either French's Forest. Belrose area.
And where did you put your warehouse or your office? In the house?
In French's Forest. Oh, well, no, I started out in my kitchen table and then my garage in the house, and then I moved to then I rented out a warehouse in French's Forest for about $15,000 a year.
Great. So this is really interesting. Often people will say to me, hey, I want to start a business. And I say, well, to start a business, firstly, don't start one for yourself. You start one to make a difference to some customer that you believe needs to happen. And secondly, it'll probably require some sacrifice, meaning that, you won't be able to live the personal lifestyle that you were living pre-having the business while you take your resources and put it into the business. I think, my analysis is that's the thing that stops most people pursuing the thing they want to do, because they've already bought a house that they can't really afford to impress people that they don't really like, and they're not really willing to make that change. It's a very gutsy thing to do.
It's really interesting people say that, but I felt so right at the time. People talk about risks. I'm taking a lot of risks now in my current business, But I think because I've got so much to lose now, back then I had nothing to lose anyway. And so for me, and I was a lot younger. And so for me, it wasn't really risky. It was just felt so normal and so right. I had such amazing customers. You know, I felt every cell in my body knew I am making people feel so good. I'm making people feel so fantastic. People put on these lip balms and they feel amazing. They feel like they're saving the planet, they're saving the world. And I just felt so right that I never really thought about it. We had all 4 kids in bunk beds in this little crappy little house. I was in French's Forest, and we had the warehouse, and then it just felt, it felt so good and so wonderful at the time. It was amazing. And it grew. That business grew from $500,000 turnover in 1 year to $20 million 4 years later.
Yeah.
The biggest year, I think, I was the fastest growing business in Australia between 2015 to 2016. I literally went from 1.9 million to 8 million turnover in 1 year.
Great. And so how did you manage that with your partner? Did he work with you in the business?
No, not at all. No, he was a police officer at the time. So no, he was doing shift work and no, I did it all on my own.
Yeah, so that's great. So you had a partner in a stable job, which is helpful.
Yes.
Being a stable human.
Yes.
And hopefully you guys helping each other with the kids. And then this thing goes from 500 to 1.9 to 8 million to 20 million. Is that the 4 years or?
No, it went 400, 1.9. Then it went to, then 8 and then 20. Yeah.
So what were just for our listeners, a lot of people dream of having a startup. What sort of hours were you working?
I was working, I was really hard on the marriage. It was really hard on the marriage because I was in the business on my own, and I'd hired I hired a couple of people to help me. In fact, those people still work at Nourished Life today in much senior positions. I told my husband at 4:30 in the morning when I got out of bed that I was going to the gym, but I would actually go into the warehouse and pack orders. But I didn't want him to know that because it was all about Irene, Nourished Life, Nourished Life, Nourished Life. I'm sick of hearing about this business. So I just lied to him and told him I was going because, husbands and wives have no problem with their partners getting up and doing a workout in the morning and whatever. I would say that I was going to the gym, and that's what I would do. And then my team would get there at, 9:00 and yeah.
And then he'd get the kids off to school and then you would work till when?
Well, I had, as the pick pack operation picked up, I had a whole bunch of casual mums come in during work hours. So they would come in, drop the kids off, and they'd be in by 9:30, and then they would leave at 3 to pick up their kids. So then I would do this. So my husband would do the school drop off, and then I would do the pick up with the other mums, and then I would come back of an evening. I probably told him I was doing something else though. I probably didn't tell him I was going back to the warehouse to work. I probably said I was going out with my girlfriends to have some fun. It's actually, people don't like hearing that you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it sounds like you're trying to, there's a culture in Australia about, it's not cool to be saying you work 24/7. It's cool to say you don't work. It's cool to say, oh yeah, I knocked off at 4, it's not cool to say you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That sounds sad and desperate. So I think I would have told a lot of people that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. So most people they experience their work as like a punishment. And so they can't imagine that anyone else would have work that they really are passionate about, enjoy, and really, really, really want to do. In fact, they want to do it more than go to play golf or more than go to the pub or more than whatever. And so then if you're an owner of a business that you actually like, then you're a bit of a weirdo. So you have to not talk about it.
You have to pretend you're not doing it exactly, but there is nothing, not to jump ahead or anything, but I would prefer to be in my shop in Freshwater selling non-alcoholic drinks, right? without paying myself, working from 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. when staying open because Vintage Cellars is across the road, making sure I'm looking at them all the time. Are they closing? Are they closing? I'm staying open if they're open. I'd prefer to do that with all the money that I made than be on a yacht on the Caribbean sailing around. I could do both. I could either be on a yacht right now, on a super yacht, drinking Moe, or I could be doing what I just did, what I'm just said I do. And I prefer to be doing this. That you wouldn't tell people that, and I've just told you that, and I don't know how many people listen to this podcast.
I think it's really important. I think it's important for people to hear it because, Irene, I don't play a lot of golf. I can hit a golf ball pretty well. It always surprises people when I go and play golf with them. They're like, hey, you can hit a golf ball really well. How come you never play? And it's because I really like my work. I like it more than I like golf. And they're like, oh, that's a bit sad. But yeah. I think it's a blessing to have a great passion in life that you enjoy rather than going somewhere every day to do something that you hate.
Well, I haven't changed one bit because that's what it was like. That's what it was like at Nourished Life. And yeah, when I sold Nourished Life, I was really depressed.
Yeah. So talk to us about that. So were you approached? Did you put the business on the market? Why did you sell the business? So for our listeners, Irene sold the business in 2017?
Yes.
2017 for 20 million to BWX Limited?
Yes.
It's a listed company. But
yes.
How did that come about? Why did you sell your baby?
I think at 20 million turnover I feel like I took the business as far as I could take it on my own. And as I said, I did it all on my own. With my team, with the girls that I'd hired. Well, I think because I was a really fast growing. Okay, you know why I sold it? Because Amazon was coming, and I got approached to sell it. All of a sudden, by a lot of people. I had 2 or 3 different publicly listed businesses approach me, in different categories, and I didn't know what to do. So I called Deloitte. I said, Deloitte, all these people are asking me about my business. They want to invest and they want to buy it, and I don't know what to do, and I don't really want to. But anyway, and then they talked me into it because they make money when they sell my business. So obviously I met with Deloitte, and they groomed me really well on how great life would be, $20 million richer. And, Amazon was coming, and I was nervous about the online space. This is way before COVID. People thought they weren't going to buy books from Booktopia anymore, right? Booktopia has now gone on to be, one of the best publicly listed businesses as well. So, but it was a bad time for online back then. People didn't understand online. People didn't get it. So I felt that it was the right thing to do. And I felt that if I didn't sell it, then somebody could have bought Adore Beauty and they could have just squashed me, and at that time I also had a lot of little competitors popping up, kind of copying me in that space. And anyone could have bought them instead and squashed me, and I didn't have that much more capital. So I felt like a good move to do at the time. Obviously, I regret it now. I wouldn't have done it. If I could go back in time, of course, I wouldn't have sold it. But I did what I did. And
how old were you? How old were you when you sold it?
Yeah, I was maybe 40.
And when you say you regret selling it, what did you learn through the process
of selling the business?
Yeah, do you look back now and do you regret selling because you think you might have sold it for more, or you would have been happy to keep running it, or that on the other side of a check and a tax bill is not much? I have this conversation with owners all the time, right? They come to me, they say, I'm going to sell my business. I say, why don't you try being retired for 4 weeks and just walk around, pretending you've got the money after you pay the tax, and then what? And often they I actually quite like my business more than I realized.
Well, Kelly+Partners was very helpful in the process, and it was very considered on that side, I have to say. So I had good advice. I really did have good advice from my accountants. I think my biggest regret is that I undervalued myself. because I was a female in business, and the business was worth for a lot more than I sold it for. And I felt that I think I could have sold it for a lot more had I had Amazon not threatened to come into the market. Of course, no one shops on Amazon, I don't think, in Australia now, but at the time people thought they might. So yeah, it was probably worth a bit more. But I don't know, like, you're not supposed to have regrets in life, so that's fine. So I have to move on from that. I think that I could have grown Nourished Life to 100 million had I hung on to it and kept going on the way that I was going instead of selling it.
Yeah.
That's all. But I'll be honest with you, I'm a bit bored of natural cosmetics and skincare. I did it. I was the first to do it, and I did it. And everybody knows what natural products are now. You can get natural products from your supermarket now.
It's almost like everything's natural. Like, it's almost like commoditized in the sense that who would make a product that said, hey, this is fantastic, it's full of toxins, heaps of poisons, kills the fish and kills the coral reef.
Exactly. So what is Nourished Life now then anyway? So the world, I feel like the world's moved on.
Well, you made the impact that you sought to make.
I did what I needed to do in the industry. Yeah. And I've moved and I've sold the business, and it's now with another company, and they'll do what they want to do with that business. And that's whatever they decide is the right thing. But I'm kind of out of that market now.
So then how do you start this new business? So you sell the business, you work there for a year or so, or whatever they wanted you to do. And then you go from natural skincare to natural alcohol.
Well, I wasn't allowed to do beauty anymore in my contract, which was fine with me. Because
were you drinking too much Moe, or what caused you to think about non-alcoholic alcohol?
Selling a business can drive you to alcoholism, let me tell you. I drank too much, and I went into a bottle shop, and I said, "Do you have any non-alcoholic wine?" Because I was drinking too much. And they looked at me like I was insane, like crazy. And it was the same look I got when I went into Priceline, 10 years ago and asked for a natural deodorant. I actually got banned. There was before Facebook, there was like the Vogue forum. That's where you would talk about beauty. You talk about beauty in this Vogue forum. It was like the number one place you would go to talk about beauty products. It's kind of like the Mamma Mia beauty page now on Facebook. So back then in about 2003, 2004, I asked them if anyone had heard about any deodorants that didn't have aluminium in it. And I got banned from the forum. You weren't allowed to talk about natural products in the Vogue forum, the beauty forum in those years. So it kind of reminded me of that. And I was feeling really sad because I missed running a business. I missed being an entrepreneur. I missed the hustle. Oh my God. I missed the hustle so much. You can't believe it. My heart was empty.
That post-sale depression.
Yeah. I felt like I had lost, I feel like I'd lost an animal or a puppy that had been with me. I yearned, I can't even tell you, I yearned and cried every night for the hustle of my business, the ka-ching, and looking at those sales numbers when I wake up in the morning. I miss the thrill of a sale. I missed the thrill of a sale like you would not believe. It was my drug, and I was like a addict that was cut off from my drug. And so that's when I ended up drinking a lot. Yeah. So I was so desperate to start a new business, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember I was just like, every day, all I would do is like read businesses, like small businesses that were for sale, and what can I do now? And then.
So what was the moment? Like, you walk into Vintage Cellars.
Yeah, Dan Murphy's. Yeah.
So the non-alcoholic drink. I always know I've been too many lunches to too many lunches in a week when they give me the drinks menu and I look for the non-alcoholic cocktail.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm like, something, just give me water,
Well, I saw an opportunity right then and there. I thought there's an opportunity. So I started doing research, and then I saw that, you could buy some non-alcoholic wines and bits and bobs online. And oh my gosh, those sites were daggy, right? And they were not sexy at all. And I felt really asking for it or drinking anything non-alcoholic made me feel like old and daggy. And I'm like sexy as hell, right? I'm like, just sold my company for 20 million bucks, right? I'm like friggin' like, hello, I'm not a dag. And so I might be a cashed up bogan, but I'm not a dag. And so I was like, I realized, oh my God, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. This is it. And at the same time, Seedlip had launched as well in the market. Seedlip was the first non-alcoholic distilled spirit in the world. It was a replacement for gin, and it was just bought by Diageo. So I thought, yeah, there's a trend here. It's really interesting because I called my girlfriend at Deloitte who sold my company, and I said, I've got another idea. She's like, good, hurry up and make another business so I can sell it again. I said, I've got it. I've got the business. And I told her I'm going to sell non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirits. I'm going to be the non-alcoholic version of Dan Murphy's. And she said, Irene, it's a terrible idea, but I'll research it. So she came back and she goes, I've had a look into that. There's not really a market for that, Irene. And I said, no, there is. Trust me. That's what they said about Nourished Life. Trust me, there's going to be a market for this. She's like, oh, I don't know. So I tell a few other people and they were like, what's the point? What's the point of that? That's stupid. Why would you do that? What's the point of drinking? And the more people told me there was no market, and the more people that told me, what's the point? And the more people that told me, that's a terrible idea, you're crazy, the more and more I realized it was the best idea I've ever had, ever. This business is going to be 20 times bigger than Nourished Life. This is like, you can't even compare.
Well, the industry is massive, right? So if you look at the established alcohol industry in Australia, must be gigantic. And if you take, if you can convince 2% of those people to drink something other than alcohol, even occasionally, the market's massive. And you think about, people worry about the impact on their mood, their mental health, their weight. There's been masses of, must be trillions of dollars spent on marketing the glamour of alcohol. Hence your comment, I felt so daggy, like an old lady asking for this. But that's because the weight of money to glamorize alcohol in the same way that cigarettes were once glamorized has been towards glamorizing alcohol.
Exactly. And unlike Nourished Life, there ain't anybody that's going to argue that drinking is good for you, that there's nothing wrong with alcohol. It's actually the number one killer in the country, probably the world.
It's got massive societal impacts in terms of mental health. I can't
domestic
imagine
violence.
Well, I can't imagine there's not a domestic violence situation that doesn't involve alcohol. It does distort people's ability to make good decisions. If people have had 3 drinks, they're not as rational as or have the same ability to make good decisions as they did before they had 3 drinks. Not that there's anything wrong with a drink, but it's just that if you can capture even a minuscule percentage of the market, the number would be enormous.
Well, my customer base are not people that don't drink, and they are, but it's people that do drink who I'm targeting. So I'm here to grow a market. I'm not here to sell non-alcoholic wine to people that don't drink. I'm here to sell, for example, non-alcoholic wine or beer to someone like you who does drink, who actually might have 1 or 2 on the weekend, but during the week, you just want to have a non-alcoholic beer in your hand and have the same routine, but still get up and do what you need to do in the morning. And that's the market I'm trying to grow. And in order to grow that market, you've got to do, not to give away all my secrets, right? But you've got to do 3 things. You got to make it sexy, got to make it cool, got to give them something that tastes like the real thing, that has the placebo effect, that makes them feel fantastic. And you have to sell it, make it easily accessible for people. And people do not want to go into Dan Murphy's or BWS and buy non-alcoholic beer. They don't, because they're going to get non-alcoholic beer, and the people that don't drink aren't going in there to start with. And my target audience that I'm trying to get don't want to go in there because they're going to be tempted by getting the alcohol while they're there, and they're there to get non-alcohol, right? So And they don't want to buy non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirits at the supermarket because that's where they buy their toilet paper. And think about the way when people are buying drinks for an occasion, it's an experience. And so I'm filling that gap. I mean, there's a gap in the market, right? I'm the first non-alcoholic bricks and mortar bottle shop in Australia, I'm filling that gap. I'm solving a problem. The problem is where do I get it from? And the other thing is the bottle shops and the supermarkets, they haven't got a bloody clue on what tastes good and what doesn't. They got no data. And I've got all the data because I've been doing it I haven't been doing it for that long, but I sold a lot of products. So I know what people want. And so
have a retail presence like a high-end boutique and then scale it through the internet?
Well, I started on internet first.
Yeah.
Online first. A one-stop shop with people can review and talk about the best products, non-alcoholic. I wholeheartedly disagree with outsourcing anything to do with your customer experience. So I run my own pick pack warehouse in Brookvale. I made my husband quit his job and run that warehouse for me the second time round. You're not getting away with it. You got away with it the first time. You're not getting away with it the second time. I had so many customers come in knocking on the door at my warehouse wanting to buy the product that I opened up. I turned the front of my pick pack operation in Brookvale into a bottle shop in January. So from there, I thought, wow, if I only have half the amount of people that walk into a main road bottle shop, my bottle shop on the main road, that walk into my warehouse, then I can totally pay the rent. So that's what I did last week.
Fantastic. It's a great story, and I'd encourage everyone to look up the website. It's Sands Drinks. Is it sandsdrinks.com.au? Now I notice that's Irene. It looks like Irene holding her drinks and lots of them. And it's a great looking website. I'm really keen to get down and look at the store. Irene, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's so inspirational to hear the story. And I think the second story is going to be even more fun to watch. I'm intending to make sure we catch up in 6 months' time. I want to hear how the sales are growing.
Well, I'm working very closely with my Kelly+Partners guys in Brookvale, actually.
Fantastic.
And to help me, because obviously I want to franchise it and really grow it as quick as I can. So I'm sure you'll hear how it's going.
Terrific. I'm keen as. I'm going to come down and have a good look. It's really, really exciting. So for all our listeners out there, I really recommend get on sandsdrinks.com.au, buy some drinks. And Irene, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a breath of fresh air to hear your story. I think that the lessons there of having a crack and not taking no for an answer is just right up my alley. So I hope everyone's enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.